will be on London, England this week for the official coronation of King Charles III. Prime Minister Philip Davis among those invited to witness the event. But he'll also be promoting key agenda items, including drawing new investment and continuing the fight against the impacts of climate change. He addressed a roundtable on the blue-green economy and resilience for small island states on Tuesday, emphasizing the importance of merging business interests with ever-increasing environmental factors.
I've had some meetings with MSC, one of our largest container port and in the cruise industry. And there is an initiative afoot. I think it's now been, right now, a law that most cruise ships or ships will have to convert to clean energy. And we've had proposals to set up regasification stations in the Bahamas for the refueling of cruise ships.
Meantime, British High Commissioner to the Bahamas, His Excellency Tom Hartley, talked about remodeling the insurance industry to protect residents of the Commonwealth from the impacts of climate change.
There's definitely an insurance gap. From what I understand, private sector, domestic insurance, property insurance in the Bahamas is somewhere around the 25% mark, which means whenever there is a hurricane or natural disaster, it's the government that has to step in because there's market failure in that space. And I do feel like what the UK has done with the flood re-programme, where the government bought out the flood risk from the flooding risk from the floodplains, is something that a lesson we could definitely share in order to help the insurance system, the insurance market fix itself.
During the day of meetings, Prime Minister Davis also signed a memorandum of understanding with the Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council and paid a courtesy call on the Lord Mayor of London at Mansion House. Prime Minister Davis will attend the coronation set for Saturday morning at Westminster Abbey, along with hundreds of invited guests from around the world. Keeping you in the know, this is OPM Press Now.
If you've seen them on the big stage, chances are they went to Arts Ed. Arts Ed is the top school for performing arts in the United Kingdom. It's a model that Prime Minister Davis would like to replicate here in the Bahamas.
I'm now seeing what we have to do in the Bahamas, and obviously we'll attempt to forge some partnership to expose our up-and-coming budding artists, actors, and artisans to be a part of what I'm seeing here. We are now topping up the budget to allocate sufficient funds to ensure that we could execute our plan to develop the performing arts schools.
From musical theater and acting to music and ballet, the school has a wide range of disciplines. With so much talent here in the Bahamas, it's imperative now more than ever that a performing arts school is developed to further propel Bahamians towards the big stage.
We have seen that in the world stage before. We've had Sidney Poitier, we had Calvin Lockhart, we've had even before them Sam Williams. And so the raw talent is there. It's just nurturing and exploiting and exposing. That is the idea of developing the orange economy. And it's connecting with institutes such as this that provide the opportunities for our young people to be exposed.
It's wonderful to have people come in and see us, but also that they take the time and that they care and that they're interested in. Our student population is very diverse, come from all over the place and different situations. So to have someone so eminent to come in and just watch them and acknowledge them and thank them is amazing.
Having been a student at the school, Policy and Communications Advisor Ian Poitier foreshadowed what a partnership between Arts Ed and the Bahamas would look like.
It was important for us to come here because we're developing our own school for the creative and performing arts, and I am working on a partnership between Arts Ed and the school in the Bahamas. It's wonderful. There's a lot of care here, there's exceptionally high standards, and I think we're going to do great things together. change is coming. This is the foundations of the Orange economy. The skills here in acting, singing, dancing are foundational. We're also doing writing, directing, producing, stage management, tour and event management. Anybody who comes through that training will be able to work anywhere on the planet. We hope and expect that they will stay at home and help to build the creative sector. We have, again, so much potential. And this isn't just about, a cultural passion, although that's at the center of it. It's about earning a good living. It's about having an amazing career.
Keeping you in the know, this is OPM Press Now.
The Office of the Prime Minister Press Office is the primary liaison between the Fourth Estate and the Office of the Prime Minister and Cabinet.
Every day, we're working to build a more inclusive economy and a stronger, safer country.
Hear all of the latest developments as the Davis administration carries out the broad mandate of progress and change. Our live weekly press briefings provide full access to current newsmakers on the most topical issues of the day. We facilitate prompt responses from cabinet ministers on the latest reports and get answers on the issues that matter to you.
Will any penalties be levied against the...
OPM Press Now, keeping you in the know.
The Office of the Prime Minister's weekly press conference keeps Bahamians in the know. Each week, we also feature a new Bahamian food business.
Many of these businesses were started during the pandemic, and they really highlight Bahamian resilience and ingenuity. Today, we have
Kathy's Bakery,
Nutty Bavarian Bahamas,
proud owner of Sensational Goodies Pastries.
Get your small business featured in the weekly OPM press conference and share your dream with the country.
Good morning and welcome to the Office of the Prime Minister's weekly press briefing. Whether you are joining us in the gallery or via the stream online, it is a pleasure to have you joining us today. I'm going to introduce Press Secretary Clint Watson, who is going to welcome our guests and introduce some very exciting topics to you today. Clint.
Thank you, Jillian. Good morning to all of you joining us by streams or live on television, wherever you're joining us. Welcome to all of those of you here to the press room. And of course, it is another week we give you an update on the progress of the Davis Cooper administration and what we are doing on behalf of the Bahamian people and keeping you aware and accountable, of course, the work that's taking place. It's an important date for us today because, of course, in another few weeks, we will be heading into the 2023 hurricane season. And that's important for us as a nation. We've seen the impact of hurricanes over the years. We've seen what happens when we are prepared, how we minimize our loss, and we see what happens when we're not prepared and how great the loss can be. And so this morning we're going to focus on disaster preparedness. If you don't know, it is Disaster Preparedness Month. Disaster Management Unit is coordinating that. They're here with all of their team. I can look around the room and see everybody here. And so they're going to talk to us in various capacities. The Department of Meteorology, we'll hear from the administration side of things. We'll hear from the deputy directors. We'll hear from the, which I think is so important, the mental health side of things, which I believe is so much impacting our country, and we're not really aware of the impact, the grand impact that it's having on so many people, particularly those who go through these ordeals. And so we're going to talk to them as well as SEDEMA. And so I believe by the time we're done with this press conference, you should be well armed, well prepared, and have a greater understanding of what it is you ought to expect over the next few months. And so we're going to turn it over to them, and then we'll come back and give you any announcements we have for Prime Minister, and then of course our highlight of our food business of the week. I'm so excited to talk to you, to meet these people and talk to them, all things Native Delights. That's going to be exciting. So let's get right down to it, and of course I'll take your questions. I know you may have questions for the administration. We'll do that as well. So I'm going to invite the Liaison Officer for Disaster Management Unit, Rosalie Folks, to come and she'll lead this section in introducing our various speakers for us, so that you are able to. And then what we'll do is, at the end of all of the speakers, then we'll take whatever questions you have for the Disaster Management Unit. All right, so right now we turn it over to Rosalie Fox. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Good morning, everyone here today. And we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being present with us. As Mr. Watson said, this is a very important topic, hurricane preparedness. Actually, you have cleared, and I want to thank the press down here this morning for clearing the deck for us to make this possible for us to hear today. Hurricane preparedness, the month of May has been proclaimed and declared the month for disaster. And here this morning, we're going to kick off with the predictions, and no one else better can do that here than our own Mr. Jeffrey Simmons from the Department of Meteorology. He will give us some predictions of what should be expected and how we should get better prepared as a people to become a resilient Bahamas. Mr. Simmons, thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you. Well, as we know, June 1st would be the beginning of our 2023 hurricane season. That would continue into November 30. Every year we have this. So every year what we do is we put out some predictions to have an idea of what the season, what kind of season we expect, and what we can look forward to as a people who resides here in the Atlantic Basin. And as we all know also, Bahamas is famously getting the name now of Hurricane Alley. So one set of predictions out for the year already. We are predicting just a slightly below normal season. On average, our season would see about 14 named storms, and 7 of them become hurricane, and 3 of them major hurricanes, which is category 3 and above of wind speed of 111 miles per hour or greater. This year, for 2023, the prediction is now out for 13 named storms, and 6 of them to become hurricanes, and 2 of them to become major hurricanes of category 3 and above. But, you know, the department, we always try to warn our public that, you know, don't mind the amount of storms or the amount of hurricanes, because really, you know, if one of them impact you, that can really be devastating for this country. Right now, the Bahamas Department of Meteorology, during this month and probably going into early June, we'll now be visiting all of our weather stations around the islands of the Bahamas. We have already started that program. We also, so we're going through doing maintenance repairs, we're doing calibrations of our radars on all of our automatic weather stations, so that we can have all of our equipment well prepared, well oiled, and to get good information whenever we are impacted by any system throughout this year, if we should be impacted. One thing the Bahamas Department of Meteorology is also doing, we know that one of the greatest problem, or the biggest problem we see in these hurricanes, comes from storm surge. We have been working over the years in terms of making storm surge prediction, and now we are aware that the information is out there, the technology is out there, for us to actually develop a storm surge atlas for these islands. So in cooperation with the National Hurricane Center out of South Florida, and also the University Corporation for Atmospheric Research out of Colorado, the Department of Meteorology next week to the 16th and 18th of May will actually be hosting a workshop, and we'll be inviting some of our colleagues from around the region, from islands like Jamaica, Cayman Islands, Turks and Caicos Islands. They'll be joining us, and what we will be doing is actually developing a storm surge atlas for the Bahamas. With that, we will be able to have a very good idea of the type of inundation we can expect as a result of a storm surge. So this information can actually be used in terms of advising communities whether or not they need to evacuate and which areas would be the best to evacuating in those areas. So that is something we look to have completed within the next few years. And so we are working toward that. So I want to say to all of us out there, the hurricane season is upon us. You should have already been prepared. Now you should be putting the final touches on your preparation and prepare yourself for in the event the warning or watch is issued from the Department of Meteorology so that you will be prepared. Every individual should be prepared. Prepare your property in the event we are impacted by a hurricane. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. As you can see, a lot of work is being done behind the scene. We have the Met Office preparing all those geographic kind of work and to make sure that the information gets out to the general public in time. And we don't want to wait till the storm comes because as he mentioned, we have 13 named storms. I think it starts with Arlene, and we can have some Dawn there, but we just hope we don't have another Dorian for our sake because we are still feeling the impact from Dorian. And as the Prime Minister said, I don't know if you were listening, we're going to make sure have a stronger economy impact and a safer environment. And that is why preparation is key. Now we will have a few words from our own Permanent Secretary, Mr. Carl Francis Smith, who will give an overview of what we are expecting from our ministry, what we're expecting from all our disaster preparedness ministries, who are all partners within to make this an effective, prepared arena, so we will have a safer place to live. Mr. Carls.
Good morning, everyone. As was indicated, Prime Minister declared this month as Disaster Preparedness Month, and we commence the month of activities with a church service at the St. Agnes Anglican Church, at which time His Excellency the Governor General, Sir Cornelius Smith, the Minister responsible for disaster risk management, the Honorable Miles Laroda, and Archdeacon Keith Cartwright, the rector of St. Agnes Church, delivered messages, which I would like for you to hear.
I couldn't be more serious when I say to the church, when I say to the community all over our country, that there is no higher calling for all of us than to be prepared for any eventuality. All of us remember what has happened to our country and to many of our communities, either in Long Island or in Grand Bahama, Abaco, back in '92, Eleuthera, and if it happened to those areas, it could happen in New Providence. Have you thought for a moment what will happen to our country if our capital city, where the seat of government resides, where the majority of our citizens live, and sadly, where many of the homes are compromised? This is serious, my friends. Let us take great care.
The past 4 years, with the exception probably of Nicole, we have fared pretty well. But as the minister responsible, I have toured East Grand Bahama, I have toured Abaco. I could tell you 4 years later, they are still reeling from the effects of Hurricane Dorian. We must be prepared. That cannot be said enough. And also, those of us who are in a position of preparedness, we have an obligation and a moral duty to assist those who are not as fortunate as us.
I just read recently of the unsettling news that the ocean's temperatures are way up from normal. As you know, hurricanes get their gas from the heat coming from the ocean. And so this is a very serious matter for us who live in places like the Bahamas. You cannot take this for granted. Every single one of the hurricanes in the last 30 years, I was on the ground the very next day. Have eyewitness accounts of the devastation that hurricanes bring to our people. A lot could be avoided if we are prepared. We got to be prepared. And so, starting this month, get your list. Go over the list that you need to have in your homes. Take a check as to how you're going to secure your property, how you're going to make sure that you are as safe as possible. Make sure get your battery-operated radios so that you can listen to the informed officials as to when you ought to be moving if need be. You must take this seriously, and this is no joke. And young people, you have to take this thing seriously. And so please, I beg you to do your part and to get yourselves ready.
So the message is to take it seriously. We each have a part to play. And this month, a lot of activities have been happening with respect to first responders and their training. There's one thing I want to emphasize, and that is our Department of Meteorology, which is staffed by very competent persons. We need to heed the forecast that is provided by the local Department of Meteorology. Whereas our friends may say a hurricane is coming to the Bahamas and it is coming to Exuma, our meteorology department will tell you which settlement is likely to be affected, which the Keys may be affected. So it is very, very important to heed and listen to the advice of the Bahamas Department of Meteorology. I again want to emphasize that although the prediction is for fewer storms, it may only take one, like a Dorian, God forbid. And so the message is, and the theme for this month is, are you prepared? We are here to do our part in assisting you in becoming prepared. There's a lot of information available, and Mrs. Folks will further detail the activities as we move through this presser on what they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carl Francis Smith. St. Agnes said it all, and the strong message coming out of the church service is that they are always prepared for hurricanes, and that was stressed by Archdeacon Cartwright. And one thing he said, we have to listen to those who are informed. We can't go, social media is out there, all kind of platforms out there, but we have to pay attention to those persons who are knowledgeable, who are informed, and who's going to give us the right prediction. So, on that note, I will invite Ms. Gail Alton, our Deputy Director, and she will really go into some details about some of the exercise that is taking place during the month of May in preparing for hurricane disaster. Actually, she's going to talk about the RIC program. She'll explain that. But I was down there last week, and I felt that I was in a storm. And really, 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 one has to be prepared. Even though there was chaos, there was direction. And once you get direction and everybody working together, because we were in a room full, just like you are, but double this with all the essential support function persons there, in case there is a storm, we're doing a lot of work in the background. So we want the public to know that we take this thing seriously, we treat it seriously, and we're going to take all that we can to make us safer in the Bahamas. Gail?
Thank you, Ms. Folks. Morning again. Well, as a part of the Disaster Activities Month, we had our annual simulation exercise known as the Restore Island Keys 2023. That was done from the 1st to the 5th of May. It's a command post exercise that is conducted to evaluate our national response to many things, but in this instance, it was a catastrophic hurricane. And it was specifically designed to demonstrate the capability of the National Emergency Operations Center, which we call the NEOC. And it was to coordinate with the Family Islands and ministries, evaluating the mechanisms and the resources that facilitate an effective and whole government response. With that, we had joining us in that whole response, because it was national, we had our disaster staff, management staff. We also had the emergency support functions, which consist of all of our ministries, the non-profit organizations, our other partners in the private entities, our Family Island administrators and their consultative committees. And also with that, we brought in some Family Island administrators along with their consultative committee members from Grand Bahama, Abaco, Eleuthera, Exuma, Auckland's Crooked Island, and Mayaguana. And we still dealt with other Family Islands as they were out there. So in other words, what we were doing, we evaluated the response to this catastrophic hurricane throughout the Bahamas and the Family of Islands. We evaluated and coordinated between the Family Islands and the National Emergency Operations Center, the NEOC, and the staff. And we also assessed our logistical response to a hazard. We evaluated the emergency support functions coordination with all of the ministries and the Family Islands and their consultative committees to see basically how we would have responded to this event. While we were in the NEOC, as Ms. Folks would have said, it was very busy behind the scenes, giving them an insight on basically what happens, how we get together and have paint the picture that we would have to paint for the Prime Minister to see what is happening throughout the Bahamas in order for us to be able to respond effectively and to deal with any other matters that may arise. With that being said, Ms. Folks?
Thank you, Ms. Gail. You have to make sure I give everybody a full names, you know? Thank you very much. But I think the experience as was Storm May, was it May? Okay. I don't know why we picked May, but it was Storm May. But believe me, it was intense, but through all that intensity, we received from Captain an all clear, meaning that we were able to go outside to check our surroundings to make sure that everything is no lines on the ground, everything. Because when we hear that all clear, it has to be taken, or it will be broadcast or spoken or given by the Prime Minister, that all clear. So that day, we had our own Prime Minister in the presence of our deputy, as our director, Russell, and really and truly, there was no pretense. We responded with resilience. Coming now to bring a few remarks from, will be our partners from the Bahamas Psychological Association, and as our PS, he claimed, there's a clarion call that, you know, mental health is real. And we really, because at that time, I know during Dorian, I worked at Princess Margaret Hospital. I came in contact with a lot of patients who came in from the storm, and I think the one heart-wrenching was a female patient. And I think she lost both her husband and her sons. And believe me, I visited that patient 3 times a day, because at that time she was not even aware of what was happening. She didn't even know what was happening. But mental health plays a very, very important role. And here to speak to that this morning is our own Dr. Juliet Storr, who will bring remarks for us. Thank you.
Good morning. I could not have a better segue into the project that we are working with the department, disaster ministry, focusing on disaster mental health. Most people are now aware, as they've just talked about the person that she had in the hospital, having lost all of her family in Hurricane Dorian. We know the research studies are now showing us the direct relationship between climate change and mental health, and the importance of us paying attention to disaster mental health. My background is in communication. I'm a communication professor, and I'm working along with Bahamas Psychological Association. As already noted, I'm also working with the Disaster Preparedness Ministry. I'm also working with PAHO and other partners like Rotary Bahamas. And all of these organizations and agencies played a significant role in the recovery after Hurricane Dorian. Our question is, how do we prepare to take care of the mind before, during, and after a disaster? And so this project, which is known as D6, will help Bahamians understand the significance of preparing the mind, the psyche, for a Category 5 or Category 6. I will turn it over to Dr. Wendy Fernanda, from the president of Bahamas Psychological Association, who will talk more about mental health and the significance of preparing the mind during a natural disaster.
So very pleasant. Good afternoon. I thank you so very much, Dr. Juliet. Often when we think of disaster hazards and we think of preparation, we think of physical, okay? We talked a little bit, and I note from the church service about preparation. And so when we talk about preparation, we talk about having the houses boarded up, having sufficient supplies, but no one thinks about the mental health implication or preparation for mental health. And so what I want to say is, I think it's important that I mention that with every physical disaster, there will be psychological disaster, and it will be multiplied. We talk about billions of dollars of disaster, of infrastructural damage, but as was mentioned by Ms. Folks, and I know that Dr. Juliet can give a whole lot of stories of interviews that have been conducted, and most of you can as well, of persons who you would have met who could give you stories. Okay, so so the psychological, the emotional, the mental disaster is that much more than the physical disaster. And so what I want to say is communities can never truly recover unless the psychological recovery is fostered. So what I would want you to take away from this is, as you prepare yourself mentally as well. Put together a mental health kit. How do I respond to disaster? I thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Wendy Fernanda. Well, we can't express it any better than that. We have to think of our own mentals, because, you know, we, particularly those working, the first respondents, because we're dealing with all sectors of persons who probably needs to go into shelters during this time. So I must say that I'm a novice in this department because I worked my whole life in Princess Margaret Hospital. I don't know really when the storm comes. I'm on lockdown, so I really don't even know what's happening on the outside. But today, And for the last 6 months, I really got a bird's eye view as to what really, really goes behind the scene in terms of preparation, responding, and I can say that this entire ministry, okay, recovery, okay, it's all encompassing, and we need everybody to be collectively involved in the process. And of course, we just not have we don't have just national partners, but our tentacles go far, very far. And we have someone here from all the way from Barbados. And I've never been there, so I think after this event, he's going to invite me down to Barbados. But coming to speak with us is Lieutenant Colonel Kester Craig. He's our Deputy Executive Director, and he'll be talking on SEDEMA, because all along this whole month, we have a calendar full of events, and I'm going to share that with you on paper before we leave here. But he will speak to us on SEDEMA and his role in partnering with the Bahamas to make us a safer place to live. All right.
Good morning and thank you. First, I must say how extremely pleased I am to see the interagency collaboration in terms of preparing for the hurricane season. You cannot get things done in silo. You have to work together. And this is very impressive to see what's happening here in the Bahamas. So the government and the people of Bahamas should be commended in terms of working together to prepare for the hurricane season, but other hazards. SEDEMA, or the Comprehensive Disaster Emergency Management Agency, is a regional organ of CARICOM that works with all of our 19 participating states to ensure that they have effective comprehensive disaster management systems in place. And when we talk about comprehensive disaster management systems, it includes having systems to deal with preparedness, response, recovery, mitigation, reconstruction. And so we work throughout the year with all of our participating states to ensure they have effective plans, policies, legislations, exercise their system, so that in event that something happens, they have the mechanism, they have the resources to respond accordingly. As you are aware, the region is the second most prone disaster region in the world, and we have to work together. At SEDEMA, we have what is called the Regional Response Mechanism, and as part of the Regional Response Mechanism, we have a Regional Coordination Center that continuously monitor all the events across the region, not only during the hurricane season, but across the entire year for all hazards. And if the event is escalated, there are 3 levels of response. There's a level 1 response where the country can manage, and in that case, we just monitor, collect information, and share with partners. There's a level 2 response. The country is impacted, but needs some amount of support. And when that support is required, we provide that support. And there's level 3, when it's significant damages and destruction within the country, and they need support from the entire region. And we activate several operational support teams. So we have one team that's called the Rapid Needs Assessment Team, and that team is deployed immediately as far as possible once mobilized to help with assessments, and within 72 hours give the country the needed information to help response. There's also what's called the CARICOM Disaster Operations Support Team, and that team support the Emergency Operations Center, because whenever emergency or disaster occur, the Operations Center needs support to operate on a 24-hour basis. So we send technical persons from within the region to support the Operations Center. Then there is the CARICOM Disaster Relief Unit, and that's a military, intermilitary, paramilitary organization of the region that provide immediate support for logistics, for shelter management, for debris movement, etc. And so those teams are always on standby to support the region. Of course, there must be the requests from the country, and once the country makes the requests, we provide the support. This week, we are here within the Bahamas, helping the government of Bahamas, and particularly NEMA, and the Met Office to implement an early warning system, SOPs, which is a SOP that has to do with working together between the two agencies to ensure that there's adequate impact-based forecasting, so that evidence-based forecasting, so people have the right information in terms of where to go, where to be evacuated, and they have the right guidance. So we're happy to be here to work with the country so that the country could be better prepared. So thank you, and we are always here to support the region. Thanks.
Thank you, Lieutenant. That's a mouthful, but it all says, no man is an island. We have to work collectively and with our partners, and I mean, thank you for being here to be a part of our exercise, our activity exercise during the month of May. And as I said, we have all foreign, our international partners. And here we also have someone from Argentina. Is anybody here from Argentina? Oh, Emiliano, welcome. Emiliano is also down here. He's represented Pacifico, and he's working along with IDB, and he's gonna be here helping us on our communication strategy, building capacity, all the kind of good stuff. So I'm gonna stick very close to him so I can learn how to communicate even better. Now we want to also highlight the day. Actually, as we here in this room, we are going, actually when we finish, we're going to the Ministry of Health. Ministry of Health plays a very major part in our disaster program. And we're going to support them. They're doing an exhibition as we speak right now on the grounds of Ministry of Health on Meeting Street. So if you all have any time today, please go and support us, because collectively, we're gonna make it better. And because our theme is what? Are you prepared? So they're gonna be highlighting some disaster programs there as well. So today, we were gonna leave here and support them as well. At this time, we wanna probably have some questions from the media, and we can address them as quickly as we can. Excuse me. I'm ahead of myself. But anyhow, while Mr. Watson is coming along, I want to also say that we've been having some talk shows all along. We had a talk show on shelter management, also on animal care, because we have to think about our animals and how we can protect them during this time. We also gonna, Bahamas Red Cross, you know, they're responsible for the humanitarian part of disaster, and they're gonna be hosting a 2-day workshop at the end of the month. And at the end of the month, on May 27th, the last Saturday in the month, we're gonna be having our 2023 Expo at Arawak Key. And we'll be highlighting all the businesses that dealing with all the safety, security kits and everything else. We want you to bring your families out so they can experience and have some more knowledge as to what to do to be better prepared. Mr. Watson? Okay. We have our shelter preparedness management in-house. Ms. Newbold, you want to speak very briefly, like 2 minutes, to give them an overview of shelter management?
Good morning, everybody. The Department of Social Services, Mask and Shelter, is responsible for ensuring that the Bahamas, all the islands of the Bahamas, has hurricane shelters. Thus far, we have 141 shelters, and that includes all of the Bahama Islands. And as I speak, shelter inspections are ongoing, and so we encourage persons in New Providence and even in the Family Islands, if you have a strong structure, what can stand up to Category 3 and above, let us know so we can inspect those structures, and so we can have more shelters. We would like to have more shelters because, like we talk, preparedness, be prepared. And so that's our focus for the whole Bahamas, to be prepared. And shelter is very important because and every time I talk about shelters, my mind go back to Dorian, and it's very emotional because we were in those shelters, Kendall Isaacs, when persons were evacuated, and mental health, like Dr. Wendy Fernandez say, we saw it all, and we say thank you to Dr. Fernandez and her team because they provided that mental health care for the persons who were in the shelter. But like I say, we have 141 shelters right now, and it's ongoing with the shelter inspections. Any questions?
Is there a specific number that you would think would be ideal for Nassau and the entire country?
Well, each island, we prefer that we have at least 20 shelters for each island and more. But that's the ideal, 20 and more.
Thank you, Ms. Anthony and Ms. Shepherd, for your question, a very, very important question, because shelter management, and we have to encourage people when we think about shelter management also, evacuation. Okay? Sometimes people, we hold on to what we have, but in times of storm, hurricane, disaster, if we get the word from the informed, we got to move with the time, because time is essential, it's important, because we can't keep going back. So we're going to try, as Ms. Newbold said, we're going to try to encourage her to get more shelter management, but the government is doing all it can to be prepared in that regard. And my question to Ms. Newbold ongoing and before this is to make sure that we are disabled friendly as well in terms of shelter management. And there's some are already in that position, and we, in times of technology, we're gonna move with the times and make sure that we protect all. We are brothers keepers, and no man is an island. Any further questions? Oh, Mr. Watson, that's your job, eh? Okay. Any further questions?
My question is for Dr. Fernando. She
Okay.
mentioned creating a mental health kit. Could you just go into be a bit more specific? What sort of things should be in this mental health kit?
Okay, so when we think of mental health, right? So I imagined you are envisioning something that's tangible. But when we think of mental health, we think of our minds, right? So we have to prepare ourselves mentally, emotionally for eventualities, and that is hazards, disasters. So it's how we go into a situation, it's how we come out of it. So we know, as was stated, that we live in what is hurricane zone. So we know that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when a storm will hit us. Andrea talked about Newbold, she talked about the shelter. She went to Dorian. But what we had was, before that, we had Joaquin, that also persons had to be evacuated from the various islands. So we have to prepare ourselves. We have to learn coping skills. We have to also pay heed and pay attention to the instructions that's given to evacuate. Oftentimes what we do is we just sit around and wait and say, well, it won't happen to me. It's realizing that it can happen to me, so move, right? So it's nothing rocket science. It's just simply being emotionally, mentally prepared. Thank you.
Everybody deals with stress differently, how it looks different in different people. Could you reiterate what you said about that before?
Yes, so absolutely. So what we know is that we deal with stress differently because we are unique even though we are all a part of the human race. And so our experiences, the different experiences that we would have gone through, is what prepare us for how we deal with stress. So someone who have gone through Hurricane Dorian, I want you to know when that would have been in November, when it was November with Nicole, right? No, with Nicole. Those persons who would have gone through Dorian, their response to the threat of a storm was that much more different from those of us who would not have been directly impacted. And the same thing is true of when we experience stressors. When we experience stress, someone who would have gone through it and would have learned coping mechanism, how to coping strategies, then they learn how to employ those coping strategies to help them to learn with different stressors. Yeah, so that's how we do it. Further questions?
Thank you.
I want you to join me.
Thank you so much, Ms. Folks, for moderating the session. And of course, we continue as a nation to support the efforts so that we all, at the end of the day, get through this period and any other disaster that may potentially be upon us, so that we get through it with wisdom and understand exactly what it is that we need to do. I do not have here any information from Prime Minister. It seemed to be good this week. As you know, Prime Minister returned, and so he's been about the people's business all week on the ground in the House, doing some things. He's making a representation for the next 2 days as chairman of CARICOM for the Association of Caribbean States in Guatemala, and he'll be back on Saturday from that. That's the only thing we have for you. Any other additional questions from media? I'll take those now. If not, we can move on to our segment. Global, I don't think is here. Nassau Guardian, ZNS, Tribune, JCN, Destiny, anything for me? Megan, anything R News? No? Good. And of course, Leah, Eyewitness News, you good? Oh, this is a perfect day for me today. Okay, awesome, awesome. So finally, this morning we wanted to highlight, I think, what has become one of our favorite segments, Bahamian food businesses that continue to thrive and do well in our country. And today we're highlighting all things Native Delights. I want to invite Regina Ward, who's the owner of that, to come and tell us about all things Native Delights, and of course, to tell us what she's sharing with us today. Welcome, Regina.
Good morning. A pleasant good morning to the media and to those viewing the live stream. I am honored for this most humbling opportunity to showcase my business here at the Office of the Prime Minister today. So first and foremost, I would like to offer a special thank you to the press secretary and team for highlighting my business today. All Things Native Delights was started in May 2019 by myself, Regina Ward, an upcoming gospel artist, a beautician by trade, in which I also operate under Beauty at 360 and a mom of one. I grew up always watching my mom in the kitchen, either cooking or baking Bahamian cakes, either for family gatherings or our then grocery store for sale in the beautiful island of Eleuthera. During those moments, I've always watched to see how I can also become great at what she did, which encouraged me to perfect it when everyone would leave the home for work. Although I've experienced small baking during my time spent at home, it did not blossom until the year 2019, during one of the most lowest points of my life. My father, another entrepreneur and role model in my life, challenged me with these words, and I quote, "The weakest points of your life are the most powerful times to think the greatest ideas on what's next." These words apply to my rapidly blossoming business. Since starting this venture, the opportunity has been given to bake treats for birthday events, conferences, board meetings, and social events. And in the very near future, also focus on offering deli wraps and danishes to accompany our treats. Today, we brought with us a few of our clients' favorite treats, which includes our cream cheese-filled pumpkin rolls, our moist vanilla pound cakes, delicious guava cinnamon rolls, cheesecakes, and cream cheese carrot cakes. Lastly, you can follow us at All Things Native Delights on both Instagram and Facebook. So without further ado, we hope you enjoyed today's treats, and thank you again for the amazing opportunity.
Thank you, Regina, and I'm sure our guests are looking forward to sampling just how skillful you are today. That's our press conference. If you have any questions, you know to reach us here at the Prime Minister's press office. We're here to answer all of your questions. Please stay safe. Have a good afternoon, everyone.